Hello and welcome to High Tales of History, a history podcast where two sisters get high and surprise each other with a story from history. I'm your older sister, Laurel.
Obviously, I'm Katie, because you got two options, so here it is.
Just said that with confetti thrown in the air. There it is. Here we are. It's season 4. It's episode 5. It's also known as episode 92, which is pretty exciting because that means that not in this season, but in the next season, season 5, as I'm going to call it, that is where we're going to hit episode 100. So after about 3.5, well, at that point, it'd be like 3.5 plus years of doing High Tales of History, we'll have hit episode 100. So I'm pretty excited about that. But before we get there, we got to get through episodes 92 through 99 first. So welcome in to 92. We're glad you're here. Katie, how are you doing?
Doing good. I've got my moon cheese. I've got my whatever chocolate that is. You hating on my moon cheese, dude?
Moon cheese.
It's like
Katie,
crispy little like cheese. I mean, the brand's not giving me shit, which is really sad. I would eat so much of this. They're like crispy little cheese chips. Yeah.
So you got your snacks. That's good. You
got my snacks.
You got your snacks. You got your special
weed chocolate.
Wheat chocolate. Ooh.
Yep.
I'm really excited for you. I'm really also excited that you had a successful trip to Lorna Shore.
Yeah, no death occurred. There was a lot of walls of death. And I was like, let me go. Let me be free. And Blake's like, absolutely fucking not. That is so not happening.
Now, wall of death, for those who don't know, I'm going to hear you ready for your non-metal sister to describe it for all the people?
I'm ready for you to describe my version of Red Rover, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Death Red Rover, basically, is what it is. So, like, everybody clears out. They clear out. There's a big space where the pit is. They just, boop, boop, boop. They go to two sides. And then what happens? What? Did you guys all go in like this?
No, there were 4, like, over the course of the night, not at the same time. That's insane. What you do is square? No.
My 39-year-old self was like, absolutely not.
You were like, what? There was no safe zone.
So two sides, and then when, I don't know, someone says go, or they decide to just run at each other.
Usually you're waiting for a cue from the singer, and the singer will be like, don't go until I say. But I mean, somebody's got to lead it. Somebody's got to, and you just smash into each other. And then people just start, like, breaking out into a pit from there.
They remind my history nerd heart as, like, you know when you see those movies of these old medieval battles and there's your two lines like of
Lord of the Rings?
And then they're like, and then they run in and then they just run at each other. And then when they hit, it's just like a clanging of,
dude,
that's what that seems like.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
That's what that is.
The best battle scene of lines meeting, in my opinion. Everyone's about to disown me, too.
All right, bring it.
That first Narnia movie with Liam Neeson as... Actually, I think Disney did it. But he is Aslan. There's a moment where everything goes quiet as the armies are rushing and they just have a heartbeat sound going on. And then it goes, like, as they hit, it's, like, full volume, like, chaos. And I was like, that. And Blake looked at me and goes, dude, these movies are way better than I ever thought. I was like, I told you they were rad. I mean, they're not Lord of the Rings. I'm just gonna say it. Sorry, guys. But, like, they're still fucking good. They're still really fucking good. So, yeah.
That's a really impressive emotional technique, I think, to use as a filmmaker, too. That's why I noticed it.
Because I'm such a filmmaking nerd that I was like, I will remember this moment until I die. That was one of them.
Because I would imagine, and this is coming from somebody with high amounts of anxiety, that would be probably the only thing I'd be hearing. You know what I mean? Like your heart's pounding so hard that you're just kind of like hearing it echo in your ears until you know. Interesting.
Impact.
I mean, not like I've been in a lot of battles in my time, but that's what I would imagine.
Well, if you get into a wall of death, it'll make you feel like you are in one. It's as close as you get.
Great.
And you'll probably come out alive, so. Battered, maybe, but it's not dead.
Abracadabra.
Dude, did I give you the good Slayer news?
What is it?
Louder Than Life announced that they're coming back as a headliner next year, and all of us that had the tickets, they're like, hey, you guys can put this amount of money so it's a single day, basically, for that single day. You can put that amount of money towards tickets next year. I was like,
oh, that's wonderful. I'm really glad wonderful. They did that.
They did not need to do that, by the way, because in there, when you buy their tickets, it says rain or shine, no refunds. So they did that out of the kindness of their hearts. That or everyone was really pissed that they missed Slayers.
And Slayer's a big deal because, like you said last week, like they're retired basically. So like it's not like,
yeah,
and they're like such a big band, you know. So if anyone wants to see them, they had this big moment to do so, and then they couldn't because of you know that darn hurricane. Hope everybody's recovering.
I thought it was Helen. It's Helene.
Helene, yeah. All right.
History.
Well, that's good news. Good Slayer news. And you've got your good chocolate, your good moon cheese. It's all good.
It's all good. Which leads us all to ask the question is, what are you imbibing in? Because I don't think you have any of this chocolate with you. Just sad.
I wish I did. I wish I did have some of that chocolate, but alas, I do not. I just a little teeny tiny smoke, but I also have my pen here, and then I have a beer. Yes, it's a beer.
Is it a good beer?
It's good.
What is it?
On me. It's from one of the breweries that we went to in Chicago on our strange pub crawl that we did together.
Yeah,
Dovetail.
Oh, the Dovetail. Yep.
It's the same one I had there, and I was all excited to see it in the fridge. And I was like, oh, yeah, I like.
Was it the Kolsch?
The Hells.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have all of our accoutrement in place for history, for high tales of history, because it's not high tales of history, it's high tales of history. So we've got it all, and we're glad we also have you. Let's do some history. What do you think? So. Slowly running out of steam. All right, here we go. Let's do a little bottle leaf grinder. She's rolling up her sleeves. She's ready to go. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Bottle leaf grinder. Shoot. All right. I just like if I stick with one of them, we're gonna do it.
I know. I was like, I'm gonna have to go different because she's gonna go same, so I'm going different.
My bottle to Katie's grinder. Here we go.
But do you have a favorite hightailing through history episode? Because someone asked me that the other day, and I gave them an answer I don't think they were expecting.
Do I have a favorite episode? I get asked that a lot. I have quite a few that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
I have some that I like. I like the topic.
Yes.
And I like it. Or I like some because I'm like, wow, they just all came together really well. And
yeah, sure.
It was a really fun episode.
I guess mine was topic. I said the diesel one you did. That was so far as like, it's at least in my top 3, if not my top 2.
I'm really glad you liked that one.
I really liked that. That was, yeah. Oh,
it's
and
a
I went
really good book that I read for it.
Was it? Oh, well, you're going to have to send it my way so I can try it because I was into that. I got to see the U505 sub. I took the gang.
Yeah?
I took the gang to the Museum of Science and Industry.
U505 is a really cool exhibition to see, and it's, as I understand it, it's one of 2 left in the world at that specific class of submarines that you can see. But Katie, I'm really glad that you mentioned the Great Lakes because I am here representing in my lighthouse keeper aesthetic. Also, I voted. Hopefully, everyone in America, you exercised your ability to vote.
Don't climb all over me. I did mine a couple weeks ago, so my sticker is long gone.
I just went on the day, so that's why I've got it. But I've got my lighthouse keeper aesthetic going on, but just add a little red lipstick to it. And I am talking about the Great Lakes today. The Great Lakes.
Fuck yeah.
Vast stretches of fresh water that go on as far as your eye can see. And I think unless you've stood at the edge of a Great Lake, one of the 5 Great Lakes that border between the American Midwest and Northeast and then Canada, you probably don't or won't understand the scale and the magnitude of these bodies of water. Because it's a big fucking lake.
They're massive.
You know?
It's like looking at the ocean. That's the only thing I can compare it to. And people are like, well, it's not. I'm like, it's a freshwater sea. I was like, but it's very intimidating to be like, it's a very big, powerful body of water. And a lot of times has really shitty weather.
Oh gosh, I'm so glad you're talking about all these things, Katie. You're so right. Just keep setting that volleyball, girl.
Oh, I'm here for it.
And people are like, okay, whatever, Great Lakes, big lake, big deal, who cares? But for the tens of millions of people that live in the Great Lakes region, they are a big deal. I mean, historically, They've been used for fresh drinking water, transportation, irrigation and agriculture, like the food supply with fishing. But girl, let me tell you something. In fact, actually, girl, I don't need to tell you, but the rest of the girls here, girls, y'all, let me tell you about these lakes. They're dangerous. They're really dangerous.
Yeah.
And you cannot underestimate them, particularly if you're a mariner. Don't fuck with the Great Lakes, y'all. They are an underwater graveyard to thousands of vessels. So
and here's where Laurel probably ruins my ability to swim in them peacefully ever again. Because if there's something I hate more than anything else, it's dead bodies in the water, which I think is a logical thing to be afraid of. But yeah.
It's a logical thing to be afraid of. And there's quite a few of them in the Great Lakes. So for my part of the episode today, I'm going to be talking about the first and last major shipwrecks on the Great Lakes. And between the two, we're going to have a little stop in the middle to the Great Lakes storm of 1913, in which 19 ships were sunk and was the worst maritime disaster for the Great Lakes. So the first known shipwreck in the Great Lakes is also considered the Holy Grail, the white whale of shipwrecks in the Great Lakes, because it is still a mystery as to where the ship sank, exactly what happened to it, and it still hasn't been, like asterisks or air quotes or whatever, officially found as of this recording. So we're going to go back to 1679. The ship is called Le Griffon. Just going to say it with a bad French accent and make everybody's ears bleed a little bit. And it was owned by French fur trader and explorer René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de la Salle. So the Sieur de la Salle, that title there is a purchased one, and it loosely translates to Lord of the Manor. That's cute. I'm going to purchase a title that's like loosely translates to like Queen of all she prevails or purveys or something, like everything the light touches is your kingdom, basically. So yeah. So that's his little title, Sieur de la Salle. But Cavelier owned this ship, and like many European explorers, Cavelier wanted to find and traverse the Northwest Passage that would link the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, and then therefore extend France's trade route.
It's what everybody wanted.
They all
Boy,
wanted
were they wrong.
They so badly wanted that Northwest Passage, and it ended with a lot of heartache and tears and mysteries when it comes to history and death. So much going on there with that Northwest Passage.
So many dead bodies.
So many
in the water,
and out of it, and all that ice. And so, cheery topics, everybody. And so he built Le Griffon, or he commissioned it, the building of it. I mean, I don't imagine.
Yeah, he didn't do shit. He just sat there and like threw the bottle of booze at it when it was done.
Yeah, I mean, with a bought title like Lord of the Manor, I doubt he did much of his own building. But the ship itself was a 45-ton sailing ship built from local wood in the Niagara wilderness. The maiden voyage, so we're over in this Niagara area. The maiden voyage was in July of 1679 from the Niagara River west towards the Great Lakes in order to stock up on furs and supplies for his upcoming voyage to find this Northwest Passage. Now he gets through the open waters of Lakes Erie and Huron and arrives in Lake Michigan. He posts up at a little island there.
One. Lake Huron is gorgeous. What'd you say?
Well, he went through there. So he went through Erie's and Huron.
Yeah.
Gets to, I mean, because you have to in order to get to Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
He gets there, posts up on a little island. He does some trade with some of the local tribes there. And he loads up Le Griffon with a bunch of furs valued around $10,000 to $12,000. It was like 50 to 60,000 francs at that time. I tried to figure this out because math is my strong suit. Finger guns, pew pew. It's not at all, not even a little bit. But I tried to figure this out and extrapolate this data. It's maybe about $1 million worth of.
I was gonna say, I bet it was worth a ton. When I was just hearing that the size of the ship and then imagining how much fur they stocked it with, I was like.
So regardless of exactly how much it was, I probably have that number incorrect, but it was a lot of money, and that lot of money was going to pay off his creditors.
Right.
So he needs it. September 18th, 1679, Le Griffon, with 6 crew members, was sent ahead of Cavelier towards Fort Frontenac, which was a French trading post and military fort.
Say that again. Where was that at?
Great question. Okay, so for those of you who are watching, I'm going to have a map up of the Great Lakes here. So it was built in the Niagara Wilderness, this boat. So Niagara is like right in between Lakes Ontario and Lakes Erie. Sorry, Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. There we go. Let's make it more clear. So it was built on the Lake Erie side. The boat travels the open waters of Lake Erie. It goes up through Lake Huron and then goes down into Lake Michigan. And then he's sending it back. He's going to be sending it back through Huron, Erie, and then also through Lake Ontario, because the fort is in Kingston, Ontario, which is on the furthest end of Lake Ontario. Whew. Okay. All right. Yeah, what a journey.
Katie's got her map going. It's helpful.
Maps are good. I'll try and include as many maps in the show notes as I can, but if you're watching, then you can visually see on the screen where everything is here.
They're very meandery, the lakes.
They are meandery. Like, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's not really a straight shot through any of them. You really you're taking a Lord of the Rings journey. One does not simply paddle through the Great Lakes.
Yeah, there and back again. My goodness. Very much so. There and back, and then back again. Like he was even like going back further than where he started. But by the end of November, Fort Frontenac still hadn't seen Le Griffon, and it was expected at that time, despite how long this path was. It was expected to be back by then. So what the hell happened is the big question, and no one really knows for sure. But there's some theories, so let's talk about them.
The year that you said this is, I was like, I don't see how you could not know. Like, somebody had to have seen where it went down or blah, blah, blah. And then you say that, and I'm like, yeah, they're never going to find it.
1679. Yeah, that's an important year to keep in mind, because it's not like there's like radar. And
there's
like
no radio.
Radio. Yeah, there's nothing like that sort of stuff that you have to think about, right?
Unless he had a messenger hawk. And even then.
Lands on his arm there. All right.
Pirates have parrots. Pirates have parrots. On the Great Lakes, we have birds of prey.
Much cooler, honestly.
Yeah, I'll say.
So these theories, they range from mutiny to ransacking to sunk by a storm to a curse placed upon it by the indigenous peoples in the area.
Oh.
Slicks her hair back. Now, as a serious historian, I'm not going to dignify that last one, as I feel it was just kind of thrown on the table just to hype up the mystery of the ship's disappearance, and then also, like, stir up some hate for the native peoples there. Boo, hiss. So here's what we do have left. We have ransacking, mutiny, being sunk by a storm. These all make a little more sense. So one suggestion was that it was ransacked. So it was either rival fur traders, or Jesuits in the area. Some people suggested that it was ransacked by the Odawa or the Potawatomi, which are indigenous to that area in the Great Lakes, murdered the crew and set the ship ablaze. One of the theories there. Then there's mutiny, and Cavelier himself, he believed that the ship, like, because he wasn't on the ship, he thinks that they all just were like, fuck this, we're taking the furs because they're worth a whole lot of money, and we're going to go and... It's like giving people like a treasure ship and then not having the captain on the ship necessarily. So you have like a pilot and crew, and
that very well could have happened. That's actually probably the most likely scenario.
Right? Or that it was sunk by storm. Yeah. So one of the passengers on its maiden voyage, so like when it first left that Niagara area, one of the passengers was Father Louis Hennepin, who is a Belgian Roman Catholic. Could be Louis. I'm going to say Louis. But he thought that the ship was lost in a storm. Because of what we know and we're about to know more of with the Great Lakes, it's seen as a pretty good scenario. Yeah. And if so, then it was sunk by adverse weather conditions, which makes sense. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Le Griffon is considered by shipwreck hunters, if you put that air quotes, I don't know, people that seek out shipwrecks. And I can only assume, more importantly, marine archaeologists and historians, as the holy grail of Great Lake shipwrecks. And people have searched for it for ages, like since 1679, 1680 sort of time, to no avail. Now, two people, Steve and Kathy Liebert, could be Liebert, they've searched for it for 42 years. 42 years they've searched for this ship. They've dedicated this as like their life's work here. I know. And they think, well, maybe it might have paid off because they think that they might have found it in 2018. Now, as of the time that we're recording this, we don't know for sure if it is the Griffon, but it does check a handful of boxes. It's in the right area of Lake Michigan, based on scans and the technology that they use to look at the lake floor. The ship seems to be the right size and has a lot of hallmarks of similar French ships from that same time period. Also, the bowsprit. This is where I get to pretend like I know things about boats. You ready? It's because I Googled it. So the bowsprit, and even though I might not even be saying that correctly, it's a spar or a beam that goes out like forward of the bow of the ship. So whenever I see ships that have this, especially like sailing ships, it looks like the ship is jousting. You know what I mean? It's got like that.
It's
that
what
mast
almost all the ships in the Pirates of the Caribbean look like.
There you go. Yeah.
A ton of them have it.
The bowsprit. And when they carbon dated that, it was carbon dated to within a year of the ship sinking. So that adds a little more evidence. That's cool, right? As of right now, nothing can be definitively said that what the Lieberts found is for sure Le Griffon. And as I understand it, there's not much more information that's come out about that situation since like 2018 or 2019, because there's currently a lot of red tape and litigation around the rights of who can go and look at it and date it and touch it and pull it up and do, there's a lot of, conservation and historical people that are in there like, no, this is ours. No, this is ours. Or no, you can't touch this because of how old it is, or this or that, whatever. Yeah. In the meantime, it's slowly getting reclaimed by nature at the bottom of Lake Michigan, wherever this ship is that they might have found.
Oh, it's in Michigan. Interesting.
Le Griffon is what we know to be the first shipwreck in the Great Lakes, what's been recorded. But she was certainly not the last. So now we're going to fast forward a few centuries and probably several thousand shipwrecks later to the year 1913. You fuckers ready for some science?
Oh boy.
History, boom. Science, boom. Let's get it going. Bring it all together. Nerd stuff. Earth science, weather. A lot of Great Lake wrecks happen in the month of November because the water in the lakes stays relatively warm until later in autumn. Now, Katie, as you mentioned earlier, how cold they are. If you have ever dipped your toes in a Great Lake, you know that warm, quote, quote, there is a relative statement.
Very, very relative statement.
Right. Yeah. I mean, warmer than ice, warmer than freezing, I guess. Yeah, sure. But during this time of year, this is actually the time of year that we're recording in right now.
I know, as you said that, I was like, oh, so tempted to go put my foot in it.
So it's this time of year where we have two major weather tracks that happen to this area. I had to copy and paste this here. Ready? So we have cold, dry air. I'm going to pretend. Here's my green screen. I'm going to get to pretend to be a meteorologist. I get to be the weather person. So we have cold, dry air moving south and southeast from northern Canada. Ooh, that's this way. Sorry, folks. I know my north, south, east, and west. So the air is moving cold, dry down from south and southeast from northern Canada. It's called an Alberta Clipper, while warm, moist air, love the word moist, moves north and northeast from the Gulf of Mexico along the central Rocky Mountains, and that's called the Colorado Low. And then they clash together like Kong and Godzilla over the Great Lakes.
That's it.
There it is.
Welcome to the Midwest, motherfuckers.
Exactly. And so here with that relatively warmer water below on the lakes, the lake water warms these systems above it and it creates a spin. And there's a cyclonic system that happens. And you get some wicked storms over the lakes in this time of year called a November gale or a November witch.
Hey.
Hey, I know, rude, right?
Yeah, rude indeed.
These gales can produce hurricane-force wind gusts, storms, and waves that are like 50 feet high or 15 meters for our international listeners. They dump significant amounts of rain and snow. They're a really big mess. And if you're on a boat on these lakes when these things are happening, you can be in a lot of trouble. And when you have these gales, they just sit for a few days over the lakes. They don't just like blow through. Along with all of this, you get rogue waves. That's fun.
Yeah.
Those are scary. And then I was also reading that waves on the lakes, especially if it's a more shallow one of the lakes, they can be, now this is interesting, they can be steeper, meaning they can be higher, and they can be closer together than you would be on the ocean. So I thought that was really interesting. So you don't have recovery between waves.
And that's so the Great Lakes is more dangerous than the ocean, in my opinion. Now, I've never been in the middle of the Pacific in the middle of a hurricane, so I'm sure it's terrifying. And I've seen footage of the North Sea. When I've seen storms on the Great Lakes and all that shit, it reminds me of the North Sea. It's fucking terrifying. It is. The Great Lakes are really scary. I've never been in one, but I've seen the rip currents that'll even take you out in them. It's very deep. It gets deep very quickly, and the water is very dark and very cold and very unforgiving. So,
yeah.
I mean, I love the Great Lakes. I will happily swim in them, but I gotta tell you, they are scary. It's almost the containment almost makes them more dangerous, which was weird to me and even more terrifying.
Right. So you're getting higher waves and they're coming more frequently, so you don't have that recovery time, like in between waves, to be able to like brace yourself or whatever, prepare. With that in mind, everybody, enter the Great Lakes storm of 1913. On November 6th, on the western side of Lake Superior, so here's a map so everyone can see. Now, Lake Superior is the biggest and also the coldest of the Great Lakes. It's also the northernmost one as well. And overnight, this storm that they just started noticing on the west edge of the lake, it gets worse, and it gets a lot worse pretty quick. And ships were suddenly running into gales and getting badly damaged from them. The Great Lakes storm, also called the White Hurricane, lasted for 4 days and contained a multitude of calamities for mariners who were unfortunate enough to be on the Great Lakes at that time. Wind gusts of 60 to 90 miles an hour and the waves they caused tossed the ships around like toys. Waves were regularly observed at 35 feet, 11 meters, and even as high as 50 feet or 15 meters. So
no,
for the
thank you.
Poor fuckers on land, they're getting pummeled by lake effect snow. So for those of you who don't understand what lake effect snow is, so if you're in the it's not great, but at least like again, like on land, you have solid land beneath you, right? Exactly.
You won't drown in the air,
you won't, but everything's a mess, land or sea. If you don't understand the lake effect snow, it also can happen on bays and oceans too. So this isn't just a Great Lakes thing. Like it happens in other areas that are really famous, or I guess infamous for it. West coasts of northern Japan, like Baikal in Russia, Great Salt Lake, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, Baltic Sea. I sound like Ursula at this point, of the Adriatic Sea and the Baltic Sea and the North Sea. So those are all areas that are famously like these snow belts. So it's when cold winds and weather fronts, they blow these clouds over the warm waters, or as I just mentioned, you get that. This is the same thing that happens with these November gales for the most part. So you get the clouds over the warm waters, and when they're near the land, they just dump a shit ton of snow. So poor Cleveland, they got buried in 22 inches of snow. So they already had 5 inches from like the start of the storm, and then they get another 17. They get a total of 22 inches by the end. Huge wind gusts that create 6-foot tall snowdrifts. So like as tall as people, right?
Yeah.
The city comes to a halt. It's chaos in other towns, but Cleveland gets particularly hit hard. Thankfully, as the storm front, as it moves onto land, it doesn't really have that power generated from the lakes, and it quickly dies down. But on the lakes, the storm is the deadliest, most destructive natural disaster in recorded history to hit the Great Lakes. It killed more than 250 people, destroyed 19 ships, stranded 19 others. and there were about $1 million in U.S. cargo, or sorry, $1 million US dollars, in cargo, iron ore, grain, coal,
Ugh.
weighing 68,300 tons, all lost during that time. So there's a loss of revenue and life and property. Like it's a mess. It's a mess. So that's the Great Lakes storm of 1913. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, cracks knuckles. I get to do a dramatic reading of all 7 verses, or 14 verses, depending on how you feel about the song structure, of the late Gordon Lightfoot's The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Spotlight. Just kidding. Actually, I'm not going to do that, but I do want to pick out one of the lines because it's very important. If you do want to hear all the song, I have it in the show notes, you guys. I'm for sure putting in the shows. I listened to all of that today.
Oh, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried. I was really worried.
It is a folk banger, you guys. But it tells the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's actually a really good song. My father-in-law is a real big fan of Gordon Lightfoot, but he loves The Wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald, that song. And so I've heard it so many times before. I've heard him playing it, but this is the first time I think I really sat down and looked at the lyrics line by line. Mm-hmm. And one of the lines, which I think is important to point out here as we're going to talk about this final one, is, "The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy." The SS Edmund Fitzgerald. Launched in 1958, the ship weighed more than 13,000 tons and was 430 feet long. At the time, it was the largest ship on the Great Lakes. On November 10th, 1975, it sank during one of those November gales on Lake Superior, killing all 29 of her crew members.
Why is it always Lake Superior?
Lake Superior. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Lake Superior's got, Lake Michigan has, if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to check my notes here in a minute.
It's the deadliest in Lake Michigan.
Lake Michigan
but I think
has
that's
the most.
Yeah, I think that's just from sheer traffic, in my opinion, because there's so many states that border that one, where Superior, it's only, one state and Canada?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, and Wisconsin touches it as well, too, but barely.
Oh, yeah, it does. It does. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Wisconsin.
Sorry,
Promised
Wisconsin.
land. Dairy. Love you.
Land of dairy. Lake Michigan has the most shipwrecks, but Lake Superior has a very particular stretch of coast that is very dangerous and has, I think, again, I'll have to check my notes here in a minute, but the highest concentration of the shipwrecks in this area. The Edmund Fitzgerald's final voyage began at 2:30 p.m. on November 9th, 1975, from Superior, Wisconsin. And to our northern neighbors, no, that was not an Illinoisan calling Wisconsin Superior. That is the town from whence the ship departed. You are not don't cherry pick what you heard there, Wisconsin. I did not say you're superior, my northern friends.
Laurel can hate you all she wants. I'm just going to write my love letter to Wisconsin now. Do not associate me with how she feels about you. My sweet, sweet promised land of dairy and joy.
I do love Wisconsin very, very much. No, it's just I know there's the rivalry there, so I was just trying to.
I mean, that's fair.
Spur it on.
Their sports teams are trash, so.
So I have a map up here. If you're watching, there's a map up to show the general idea and path of, like, again, Lake Superior, but then also where the ship's departing from, and then you can see the route that the ship takes. Captained by 44-year veteran Captain Ernest M. McSorley, and crewed by 28 men. The Fitzgerald was loaded up with 26,106 tons of taconite pellets, which is, I didn't know what taconite was until I researched the story. I was like, what's that?
Right.
So iron ore, like iron was what was mined for ages, right? Like iron, boom. As that started to run out, they found that they could use like refined iron, like a lesser grade, if you will, and it still worked fine. It's called taconite. So the taconite is made from processed iron ore. It's heated, and then it's rolled into these like marble size balls, like these little pellets. So that's fun. But it's got a whole lot of that on board.
So it's an easier way to transport it, basically.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And
to
measure
me.
it out, probably.
Cool. Yeah, and then you can heat it down and
Sure, makes sense.
Melt it down, not heat it down, melt it. I mean, I don't know how iron works.
You melt it.
Melt it, right? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Thanks.
I watch Forged in Fire. I know all.
I know a thing or two about a thing or two, let me tell you. Now, the Fitzgerald was soon joined by the Arthur M. Anderson, captained by Bernie Cooper. So we have the Anderson and Captain Cooper, and then we have the Fitzgerald and Captain McSorley. Just to help pair these two together.
Got it.
The Fitzgerald, being faster, took the lead, and the two ships stayed within like 10 to 15 miles of each other and were in frequent radio contact. They stayed together just because buddy system's nice, but particularly because they knew that this November gale, a November witch, was blowing in, and they were going to take a more northern course, a little bit closer to the Canadian shoreline, because the highlands there helped to block some of the weather onto the lake. So they're like, we're going to go a little more north. Again, I'll put it up here on the map so you can see generally the area that they took. And then they were going to take a turn, go south towards Whitefish Point. Boom. There's your map for you. As time went on, though, the storm quickly got worse. Captain Cooper at the Anderson, he reports watching the Fitzgerald pass a little too close to an area called 6 Fathom Shoal, north of Caribou Island. So he and his officers are like, oh no, they're getting kind of closer, a little worried about this as they're watching it happen. But the Fitzgerald passes through this dangerous area of shallow water and keeps on going. They're like, okay, phew, all's good. All right. Soon after, though, the Anderson lost sight of the Fitzgerald due to all the spray and the snow off the water from the storm. But they still had radio contact. So they can't like see it so well. Every once in a while, they might catch the lights of the ship, but they don't really have great visuals on the ship now at this point because of the storm. At 3:30 that afternoon, only about an hour after they departed Superior, Captain McSorley radioed Captain Cooper and said, Anderson, this is Fitzgerald. I have a fence railed down, 2 vents lost or damaged, and a list. So a list is when like the ship's going over. It's not fully upright. It's going to one side or another. I'm checking down, meaning I'm lowering my speed. Will you stay by me till I get to Whitefish? So McSorley's checking down his speed to allow the Anderson to catch up and get a little bit closer. And Captain Cooper asks McSorley, he's like, do you have your pumps going? And McSorley's like, yes, both of them. That's from shipwreckmuseum.com. Thank you so much. After that, all radio contact from the Fitzgerald concerned more like navigational info. Like, okay, we're going to go, we have this course, we have this heading, this sort of speed, this amount of time until we get to Whitefish Point. Like, it's all navigational stuff. There's nothing distressing that's coming back and forth. Later, a huge wave hits the Anderson and it takes out one of the lifeboats. By this point, the gusts are about 65 to 80 miles an hour, and there's waves about 18 to 25 feet. No, I don't, no, that's too many feet of waves. The Anderson's getting tossed around, and they're intermittently losing radio contact with the Fitzgerald because the waves were so high that it was actually blocking out the radio transmission to the other ship. So it gets kind of spotty with I know I can see you getting stressed. Sorry. It gets kind of spotty with the radio.
I must have drowned in a past life or something. Like that.
Yeah, I can see you like really stressing on over there. Sorry. And you all know, if you've listened to the show for any period of time, you know how Laurel feels about large bodies of water and ocean. Like,
well, the Titanic story was tough enough for me, but
I don't like it.
No.
Don't.
I'm just trying to follow along right now on a map just to see about where they're at. But
okay.
Well, this is an interactive podcast.
It's interactive for sure. So there's your map. There you go. So you can see it. The last conversation between the two vessels was at 7:10 p.m. in which they continue with their navigational chat. You know, they're still going, all right, we got this distance until Whitefish Point. Here we are. This is the time. This is how many knots. And here's how it finishes. Quote, by the way, Fitzgerald, how are you making out with your problems? This is First Officer Clark. The Fitzgerald replies, we are holding our own. And Clark says, okay, fine. I'll be talking to you later, and signs off. The radar signal, the PIP, as it's called, of the Fitzgerald keeps getting obscured by the sea. So like sometimes it's like, boop, they can see him, boop, they can't. Around 7:15 p.m., the PIP is lost again, but does not reappear. First Officer Clark calls the Fitzgerald again at about 7:22 p.m., and there is no answer. Concerned and no longer able to see any lights from the Edmund Fitzgerald, Captain Cooper of the Anderson asks other ships in the area if they have since been in contact with the Fitzgerald, and no one had. So Captain Cooper radios the Coast Guard for assistance in locating the Fitzgerald. But with the intensity of the storms, the Coast Guard is already in the middle of some rescues and trying to help other ships, and they're going to we'll try and get to you as fast as we can. So it gets to about 8 o'clock before the real search is started for the Edmund Fitzgerald. The Anderson becomes the lead vessel in the search, and they do find the Fitzgerald's 2 lifeboats. These boats typically have about 2 lifeboats and some debris, but there were no sign of survivors. Investigations into the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald showed that there was no distress signal given, and the ship sunk quickly, and there was little to no attempt to abandon ship.
They probably didn't realize it was happening until it was halfway in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much the best answer you can give there. A lot of people throw the mystery of the Edmund Fitzgerald around this story, and there's reasonable explanations.
I guess I don't feel a lot of mystery around the Great Lakes. I just know that they don't fuck around.
So what happens, right? We don't know. But one possible reason for the wreck is the Fitzgerald's carrying too much weight. Cargo's too heavy. It makes the ship sit lower in the water.
Yeah.
And then it makes it more vulnerable to being overwhelmed by these sudden large waves. Now, the Edmund Fitzgerald, I've got pictures up again so you can see them, but it's one of those long cargo ships, rather flat in the middle, and then they've got stuff going on each end, like a tower where they're driving and piloting the ship, and then there's a little station in the back.
I pulled it up. I'm looking at it. Yeah. Oh, it's like a barge.
Yeah, it's kind of bargy. Yeah.
Ugh.
So they're thinking that maybe it sat a little lower in the water and it was able to get more overwhelmed by waves. The official report also cites the possibility that the hatches to the cargo area may have been faulty, leading to a sudden shift of cargo that capsized the boat, it made it too heavy on one side or things fell over. During the month of May 1976, the U.S. Navy sent recovery teams out to try to find the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And on May 20th, 1976, a shipwreck was found in 2 pieces, and they found on the stern Edmund Fitzgerald. It was 535 feet below the surface of the lake. In an official report in 1977, the Coast Guard says that the cause of the sinking could not be conclusively determined, and they maintained that, quote, the most probable cause of the sinking of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald was the loss of buoyancy and stability resulting from massive flooding of the cargo hold. The flooding of the cargo hold took place through ineffective hatch closures as boarding seas rolled along the spar deck, end quote. So that's what the Coast Guard says about it.
And honestly, if it rolled the wrong way, and though that the boat's already having to contend with that motion, if that iron ore shifts suddenly, all it takes is a little extra water, a little extra weight, a little too far one way, and especially that it happened fast and they had no time to radio.
The Lake Carriers Association, however, really disagreed with the Coast Guard's report that suggested the crew was somehow responsible for the disaster, that there was faulty equipment or something. They're like, nah, we have a report from Captain Cooper of the Anderson who has always maintained that the Fitzgerald passed a little too close to this 6-fathom shoal area, which is really shallow water. And this Lake Carriers Association is like, yeah, that could have been something that happened where, it may have taken on water from the bottom. It might have gotten a hole in it from these shoals.
Oh, yeah.
Others still have speculated that perhaps the speed of the sinking and the lack of the distress signal was that the Fitzgerald, as it hit a wave, it submarined bow first into a large wave. So it's here's a wave coming as it's going down, and the wave hits the bow of the ship, that it take the whole thing down, and maybe that's part of why it snapped too. I don't know.
I hate when we do this topic.
I know. Does it stress you out so much? I'm so sorry. Good thing you're going second.
Yeah.
But as of today, there has been no conclusive cause for the sinking of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald. But it has been immortalized in song by Gordon Lightfoot, and you can find the bell at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum as a memorial to her lost crew. So why do all these ships sink in the Great Lakes? It's estimated that there are anywhere from 6,000 up to about 25,000 shipwrecks in the 5 Great Lakes. Now, these estimates they vary wildly, but all my sources said there are at least 6,000 that we're looking at here. So many. It's so many. And they're still finding more. In fact, actually, I was just, I don't have it as one of my sources, but I just happened across it that in February of 2024, they finally found yet another ship that went down during the Great Lakes storm of 1913. So they finally found that one, well over 100 years later. And most of it is all due to these storms that I was talking about and these weather fronts that move through here. And for the longest time, and even still, like going forward into the future, obviously I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm not going to speak with like too much authority on this, but especially back in the time, it's not like they had the technology that we do now to be able to predict weather in the way that we can, and certain alerts and stuff like that. So after that storm of 1913, they were really kind of like after the Titanic, when everyone was like, what the fuck? Why aren't there enough lifeboats? What's going on here? It was the same sort of thing after this storm where people were like, wait a second, we need a better warning system. We need to be able to have certain ways to communicate a building storm and these gales. So there was a progression in science and how how these storms were monitored over the Great Lakes, of course, continued on through this day, because the Edmund Fitzgerald is the last major shipwreck. That was 1975. I actually thought the Edmund Fitzgerald happened like way back in the 2010 or sorry, the 1910s or 20s or something, I don't know why I thought it was like so much older. And I was like, wait, 1975. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it happened this time in history, like this week, at least at the time that this episode comes out, we're at the 49th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And so I was like, we need to talk about Great Lakes shipwrecks. Great Lakes, they're nothing to fuck with, for sure.
No.
And there's that stretch, as I mentioned earlier, there's this stretch of Lake Superior.
I was interested to hear where you were going to tell me.
Yeah, so let me pull up my map here real quick. I was in Marquette a few years ago for a wedding, and I was seeing their Marquette,
nice.
Michigan, sorry. And I was seeing their iron industry. Like they have like these really cool docks where they load up these ships. So here we go. Boom. For those of you watching, here's your map from Munising, Michigan. We're going to take it 80 miles along that coast all the way out to Whitefish Point. That was that area that the Edmund Fitzgerald and the Anderson were trying to get to, because once you get around that point, you have a little more shelter in that area there before you get to Sault Ste. Marie. But that is the first major shipwreck on the Great Lakes, the last major shipwreck on the Great Lakes, and then the Great Storm of 1913 in the middle there.
I tell you what, man.
Sorry to stress you out.
No, I mean, it's all good. But you want to know what truly ruined the Great Lakes for me is when someone's like, yeah, Lake Superior gets so cold the bodies don't decompose. It's like, awesome. Thank you for forever haunting me with that.
Well, Katie, I don't want to alarm you, but in most bodies of water, you're going to find...
We're not talking about it.
As
long as we don't talk about it, I do fine.
Okay, all right. I just want you to know that...
no, we don't want you to know.
As you think. Okay, all right. Just want to make sure that you're on the same page here.
I've swam in lakes that had bodies in them. I'm well aware. I try to forget that fact as often as possible.
Okay. Oh, ahoy there, fellow sailor of the high seas of history. We've loved having you here, and we hope that you've been enjoying yourself in the Smoke Circle so far. If so, please make sure that you are subscribed or following on whatever platform you're listening on. And while you're there, please make sure that you're rating and reviewing, as that is the best way that you can support our little indie history show for free. It helps move us up in the charts and get seen and heard by more history lovers like yourself. If you want to help support us further and get access to more content like bonus episodes, historical cooking videos, and historical movie nights, head over to Patreon and join the Best Buds Club. You can even join our Patreon for free. That's patreon.com/High Tales of History. Next up, we're going to let our hair down, saddle up our horses. We're going to get our tits out for lower taxes. Now, I know that got your attention. So with that said, let's puff pass it to Katie in part 2.
So after that Debbie Downer of a story, I'm here to raise our weeks because, I mean, it's election week as well, right? It's just everybody's going to get disappointed. Everybody's going to get upset. My moon cheese will still be in my hand as I snack my cares away.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I'm going to do about it.
I'm going to have so many snacks tonight, and also going to be rolling a big old fat one either way, I think. So,
without a doubt. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, like I said, this is going to uplift us all.
Yeah.
All right, listeners.
Okay.
Gather together.
Okay.
We need to have a chat. Mm-hmm. We need to put our history nerds as well, heads together and discuss. We're going to examine a legend from history.
Love it.
And we are going to decide for ourselves what the truth is here. Mm-hmm. So today I bring you the story of Lady Godiva.
Ooh, like Lady Godiva.
Right?
Yeah, please lay on me the legend that is Lady Godiva.
Okay.
The lady, the myth, the legend.
Indeed. So most people are well acquainted with the story. I'm sorry, I'm high and sometimes I just like buffer between sentences. Most
between
people
syllables.
Yeah, I like buffered and I was like, oh. So most people are familiar and well acquainted with the story of Lady Godiva. For those that are not, we are going to review it now. For those of you that are, you're going to hear it again anyway, so you might as well just act excited. The story of Lady Godiva is a 900-year-old English legend. This shit is old as fuck.
Okay.
Can we get that on a t-shirt?
This shit is old as fuck.
Yeah. And then I'm going to wear it to museums. Mm-hmm. More correctly, it is a Saxon legend because I'm up my own ass about history and accuracy, and the ADHD takes the reins and there's no stopping it, much like this entire rest of the sentence. So, the story of Lady Godiva, or, gonna butcher the pronunciation, but I'm gonna do my best, Godgifu? It's a Godgifu. So that's all how she's also known as in like written records, which is really interesting. The story is brought to us by the chronicler Roger Wendover. Sorry, I should probably not do that. We have an international audience. Roger Wendover. I'm high. Give me a break. And I just took another half of that edible, and I was like, this hasn't fucking kicked in at all. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
Anyway,
there it is.
In case you were wondering, like I was, a chronicler is someone who writes down important shit from history. That's it. According to his writings, Lady Godiva appealed to her husband to lift the heavy tax burden off the people of Coventry, England, which they said was in like, oh, you know it?
Yeah. So she lived there?
That's where it was.
Okay.
The people were being taxed. Burdened, Laurel.
Burdened.
Indeed.
Burdened by the taxes.
It is assumed that she was probably a persistent... It's written like this. It's written that her husband just kind of gets like, so just like, fine, woman, if it will please you, I will do it. But he says in jest, if I'm going to do that, you better ride naked through the marketplace. Which, who says that? I mean, because if you have a wife anything like me, I'm probably going to do it. I'll have cute pasties on, though, because I pay good money for those.
I love her already.
Right? So, as the legend goes, Lady Godiva herself orders the people of Coventry, to stay inside, and then she rides through the town naked. I read out a beautiful sentence for it, so here it goes. Orders the people to stay inside. Rapunzel lets down her hair, mounts her horse, and did what her husband requested. And then I followed it up with that dirty bastard, which is not historically accurate. That's just my opinion. So...
Was her hair covering her body? So she just had like a lot of it. And
all except her legs, as the legend goes.
Okay.
So she had, but I mean, if you don't cut your hair and you braid that shit for forever, she probably did have enough hair to hide everything.
I take it all. You just go.
And I mean, if you're not trimming your lady beard, well, that sucker's its own cover. So sorry,
lady beard.
Please leave that in there. Incidentally, if anyone, this is an adult show, right? Am I allowed to say certain things? Cool. If your man uses beard oil, it works on the lady beard as well, I found out. Keeps it nice and soft.
That's so good to know. That's good. It's such good information.
Yeah.
Oh, Lady Beard.
We are a real life podcast here to bring you the important things. So anyway.
That's my pirate name. That's going to be my pirate name. Lady Beard.
Do you braid each?
Yeah, just, oh my God, I'm going to have to edit so much. Just braid it out. I don't. I'm not at a braidable level. That's not.
I'm gonna be soon now that you said that.
Okay. So Lady Godiva, she lets her hair down. She covers her bits and pieces.
Her bits are already covered. That's the point of the lady beard.
That's the lady beard. Okay. And
so right. So a few hundred years after this happened, the part about the peeping Tom was added. So in the legend, there is a man who looks. He's known as the peeping Tom. And then, depending on the version you read, he was either struck blind or struck dead. So, yeah.
Don't be a peeping Tom in general.
Basically.
But also dead or blind.
I mean, if you're going to be a
also just don't do it in the first place.
But I would also stare at titties, too. But if they were covered, there's nothing to stare at, so.
You know, I imagine people at the time really had their imaginations running
probably
wild,
have you read some of those medieval letters over on like Kinky History? Goddamn.
It's like you know, like back actually this might really, I know it's really gonna age me, but like maybe you too, but like back in the day, back on like cable TV, the dirty channels would also like HBO and stuff like that, like you couldn't, but they would all be like scrambled, like I remember like,
and you're trying for so long just to get a fuzzy tit.
Maybe I saw a tit in there. I don't know, man. So maybe that's what he was doing. He was doing like the static screen through her hair as she rode through town. He was like, pretty sure I can see titties and nipples as she rides her horse.
It's possible, but she was doing it for your tax breaks. Have some fucking loyalty.
Yeah,
go pay to see some tits. Yeah. So she was trying to get a tax break for the people. He and Jess says, yeah, fine, I'll do it if you ride naked through town. She fucking did it. Mm-hmm. And there you go. So here we are. We're all sitting here in the smoke circle staring at each other now. And you're saying, so what now? What was the point of that? Was it real? Did it even happen? I'm so glad you asked. Not to give you flashbacks to the Robin Hood episode, which I couldn't find the number, but it's the same one with the lavender scare on it.
Mm-hmm. I'll put that in the show notes.
The answer is maybe. It's a big old fat maybe, which is better than no. So you're saying there's a chance. As we dive into our manuscripts and other such historically important and probably dusty documents, let us wade through the marsh of uncertainty and legend together. Not like, I almost said Shadowfax. Who drowned in the marsh?
Oh, Artax.
Artax, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, we're not going to drown in the swamp. We're all going to link arms.
For all of us Gen Xers and elder millennials who had to deal with the trauma.
I was traumatized by that too,
Did you see that? Okay.
You just are you kidding me? Did I see that? Holy fuck. That wolf scared the shit out of me until I was 16 years old. No one should reasonably be scared of that movie after 10.
That movie's pretty rough.
Actually, I was holding the cat and like flying her around going, doing the theme to it. And Blake's like, I can't believe she's letting you do that. I was like, we're having a rare moment right now where she's totally okay with it. Didn't last long. So let's start with Godiva.
Okay.
Not the chocolate, but the woman. Did she exist? So I'm happy to report to you she did. She exists, for sure. She died somewhere between 1066 and 1086. She was an Anglo-Saxon woman, married to Leofric of Mercia. I don't know how we always end up in the fucking 1000s, 900s, 800s as Norman conquest is happening and Norse conquest is happening. We're always going to be here, you guys. At this point, stop asking.
You do love these centuries of
I don't mean to.
History,
it's not my
British
fault
history.
All the good legends decided to just show up there. I just report the history. I don't write it. So she's an Anglo-Saxon woman. Anglo-Saxon women at the time were allowed to own land. What? In all
Word?
caps?
Okay.
Yeah. So Coventry was actually one of her estates. Now her husband, Leofric, he's still the Lord of Coventry. But she has a lot of sway with him, we shall say. Because basically he married her and she already had a lot of like land and power kind of thing, which was kind of cool. You know who she
I love
reminds me of
it.
a lot of is Boudica.
Yeah, minus the raising towns to the ground. Yeah.
Well,
Just,
yeah.
like a fiery
She
lady
raised
who...
those taxes to the ground, Laurel. So not every battle has to be fought for glory. Sometimes it can be fought for lower taxes. I'd say she did just fine. Yes, she didn't have to conquest against all of Rome. It was just her fucking husband. But, let us not diminish her achievements. Thank you very much.
Battles look different, for different
To each
things.
of us.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, she just reminded me of Boudica has that like very fierce like warrior goddessness to it where like it's not the helpless woman vibe. It's the like half naked savage Amazon warrior. You know what I mean? That kind of vibe. Indeed.
Sure. Yeah, I got you.
All that to be said. Of a much gentler nature, but she, I mean, let's get into it, right? Lest we not say more about this. With her husband, she founded a Benedictine priory and later the Cathedral of St. Mary. She was an incredibly pious woman. She donated much of her physical wealth. She even melted down her own personal jewelry into little crosses to place all over the cathedral. So I know she lived it, man. She believed what was preached and lived it to the utmost, I would say. She also made a lot of donations to a monastery at Stowe in Lincolnshire, as well as many other religious institutions across the country. She is the first lady to be mentioned in the Doomsday Book, if you know about that. Fucking Doomsday Book. I went over it in the Kingdom of England, where we go through that. Oh, fuck.
I'll make sure I put that in the show notes, too.
Yeah, a good idea.
I wouldn't be able to tell you about it off the top of my head, but I do remember
I should have written it down, and I didn't. I thought to write it down. I was like, no, I'll remember, and I know myself better than that. So the Doomsday Book, actually, we went over it in fucking William the Conqueror. Right. The Doomsday Book is a manuscript record of the Great Survey of England and parts of Wales that was completed in 1086. Okay. So it was it was a big deal because it was the first time that had been done in the country. Because William was big on, I have no good word for organization. Like he was big on like making an infrastructure for the government, if that makes sense. So he can take stock of what it is. And that kind of helps you to better, like distribute resources and shit like that. I actually just had to fill out a census. So she is the first lady mentioned in that Doomsday Book and was the only woman to still own land after the Norman conquest of England, which we discuss in the William the Conqueror episode. Just putting that out there if you haven't heard it.
Oh, so even after the Norman conquest, there's records of her still owning her land.
She still had land, yeah. Because he was right before that.
Actually.
It isn't it? I know. And she's in there. So she is a woman of, I don't know, successful progeny would maybe be the word. Her granddaughter, gonna do my best to not butcher this old ass English name, Aldgith, married Harold Godwinson, and thus became the last queen of Anglo-Saxon England. And it went on to point out that, if nothing else, that marriage is an indication of the strength of the House of Mercia, which Godiva was a part of, and she built because she had wealth and lands and whatnot. So her granddaughter, Aldgith, was first married to Harold's enemy, King Gruffydd, ap Llewellyn, and she went and got married to him. Basically, they were a powerful enough family to negotiate better terms for themselves, if that makes sense, is what I'm trying to very disjointedly tell you.
Okay.
So her,
picking it up.
Yes, her progeny and house, they had power, they had influence, and they weren't no one, if that makes sense. So I know what you're all asking right now is, did the naked ride ever happen?
Did it? Did the naked ride ever happen, Katie? That's what we all want to know.
Well, I'm going to give you another Robin Hood answer and say maybe. Probably. So here's the thing. The problem is the account of this happening wasn't written down until almost 100 years after she died. So, which happens because oral history was a big part of how humans did things until we were able to write things down. So you have to contend with hopefully somebody actually remembered what the fuck happened to write it down correctly. There is a chronicler other than the first one, Florence of Worcester, mentions Leofric and Godiva with respect, but does not refer to the ride. There's no evidence connecting the rider with the historical Lady Godiva, at least in his writings. She was real without a doubt. Any land under her name was under that Godgifu, or Godifu. I'm assuming it's some sort of Old English that I'm not familiar with. So that was the moniker, though, that she was known by at that time period. So the legend of Peeping Tom didn't become a part of that tale until the 16th century.
So certainly later. Yeah.
Right. So the Godiva myth is later popularized in songs and in verse by the likes of Alfred Lord Tennyson, who wrote a famous poem called Godiva in 1840.
Also immortalized by the late, great Freddie Mercury. And
there Queen. It is. Absolutely. Because that's all I was doing was singing, and I was like Lady Godiva, I'm gonna go. And Blake's like, what do you sing? I was like, it's Queen, dude. It's Queen. He's like, oh. I was like, you just earned yourself an entire greatest hits tonight, performed by yours truly. Maybe I will be in clothes, maybe not. I performed Careless Whisper shirtless the other day, and it was fucking hilarious. On to another set of titties besides mine. One of the few examples of concrete evidence we do have in this year was that this was all said to happen. So Edward the First was king. He's after William the Conqueror. So Edward the First, just so we're clear, ruled uncrowned, it says. From 1016 to 1057, Edward, King of England, is the son of Edmund II, which was Edmund Ironside, who actually I thought was one of the descendants of Ethelstan, wasn't he? In my Kingdom of England thing, I'm pretty sure that's when this all happened. I'm like 99.99% sure. So, yes. Anyway, so we've got the fucking survey. It has all this shit in it, okay? So in his records, it shows in that particular year that Leofric collected no tolls except on horses alone from his people in Coventry for that entire year. So fucking explain that to me if it didn't fucking happen.
Okay.
Right? So I know. Well, that to me, I was like, it fucking happened. I hope you're not told otherwise. But I think, again, let's remember Katie likes to believe in the fantastical a little bit because, I mean, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So, but it kind of leads you to believe such a story couldn't possibly be made up, could it? I mean, sure, of course it could. But would a fake story have the staying power of 900 years? Yeah, absolutely. Again, look at what happened with Robin Hood. You know, sometimes people pick up that mantle and whatnot, but there's no real documents around to give any for sure evidence that said, yeah, this happened. This lady fucking whipped her tits out and rode around town. It was crazy. Like, nobody said something like that. And again, until like 100 years after. So, it is also worth noting that Lady Godiva lived at a pretty turbulent time in that history. If you've listened to any of the episodes I've done on that, she lived to see 9 kings sit on the throne of England. And so those writing down history are otherwise occupied probably with what's going on. So considering the amount of, political clout Godiva clearly had, and obviously she was viewed as a very pious, godly woman, we shall say, would probably be the best way to describe her. The story of her ride around Coventry, I mean, for me, it gains credence. For some of the authors that I cite from as well, some of them were pretty convinced. Other people are like, it never happened. Not at all. Not at all. But for me, it's like, well, why were only tolls collected in that year for the horses alone. Because she rode a horse through town? Because she had to use it to get the job done, so he was going to tax something? You bastard. Anyway.
It's interesting, yeah. Or somebody's bridging the gap and being like, well, here's a story that we're going to apply to this unique situation,
It's possible. Of course that's possible.
Sure.
And that's,
right.
it's worth thinking about, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It almost seems like ridiculous to make it up though. Like, why would you make a story up like that? But as I say here in my closing remarks, Lady Godiva will mostly remain a woman of mystery. Her husband was buried in, it was a big fuss, in the porches of the abbey. Lady Godiva's resting place is not specifically known. It's probable, they think that she was buried with him or next to him or whatever, because I think she passed away 10 years after he did. I probably wrote it down. Yeah, 10 years later. But as is her way, there's no hard evidence to the case, so it shall remain a mystery. So, I think it happened only because of the toll situation, but
okay. That's fair.
That's my personal opinion. And I think it's a weird story to make up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for one thing. I think that's fantastic. I've never really known the story of Lady Godiva.
Neither did I. And I was sitting there. I was high as hell, actually, in a hot tub when I thought of it. And I was sitting there and I was like, dude, I should do the story of Lady Godiva.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. And I think,
I thought it would be complete bullshit and there wouldn't be enough for me to do a story on it. Mm-hmm. I'd have to do like a reel.
Yeah.
But there was more there. Like, I was shocked that I found even what I found about it.
Well, I think the only tolls of the taxes being collected then, that following year, that's interesting. It's an interesting little tidbit to add with it for sure. Potentially point to that being something that happened in real life.
Yeah. Or they just had a hard year of famine. So
had a hard year. Yeah. Right? Like, you got to look at all the evidence there on the table. Like, maybe there wasn't a good harvest. And they're like, yeah, you know what? You don't need to pay all that money because you got no money. But, but I think when we're looking at like legends and mythology and these sorts of stories in history at various cultures across time, right? I really love the folklore. And I know, like, it can be really easy for people to be like, well, is it true? Is it not true? Is it this? Is it that? And really try to like dig in and grab onto something with that. But I think there's something, maybe a bigger picture, a more important picture to look at of how the mythology, how the folklore, how these legends, like what they say
Robin
about
Hood
the people.
episode.
What's that?
Look at the Robin Hood episode, everybody. We get into this. But keep going. And don't stop.
Well, exactly. It's like, what is this saying about the time? What's it say about the people? What attitudes is it? What is it pointing out as important to the people at the time? And I feel like those are all things that historically, when you talk about like actual evidence or some concrete things, that are important pieces that you can use. I mean, this is coming from me, right? Like, you have to take my word for this sort of stuff, but that's just my attitude and my opinion about that.
Like, even when you're reading the sagas and stuff, why was that written down? Mm-hmm. Why is that story important enough for them to write down? What's special about that? I agree with that wholeheartedly.
And would embellishing certain details, what would that add to it? Like, what is that, especially when you're talking about maybe a leader of that time and, making them seem larger than life or whatever, what does that add to it too? Right?
Yeah, so they did say that the monk that wrote about them is known, the chronicler, was known for stretching the truth. And I was like, oh, so it's another, who's the Rome guy again?
Yeah, there are a lot of historians and chroniclers throughout time, especially in ancient times, who are famously not very reliable.
Or were just coked out of their mind. What do you want to bet?
Yeah. So you're always, I think for people, I think, like, for me, if I ever went and became like a like went to school for history or something like that, like I think I'd be really put out with like ancient history, as fascinating as it is, right? As much as I like learning about it, if I had to actually be a scholar of it and be like, I don't really know, like these primary sources, like some of these things we know that this person would famously make up certain things about this or that. So how can we trust what they're going to say about this? You know, things like that. I would be like,
it's frustrating.
So there are people better than I that are going to do that, and I'll let them make those sort of decisions on history. But it's fascinating stuff, and I do think that when we're looking at what are a culture's folklores, like what are their mystery or not mysteries? I'm sorry, what are their mythologies and stuff? Like, what does that say about the people? What can we learn through that? Is really interesting. So Lady Godiva, she sounds like she's a real
kind
of
interesting, kind of puts her in like, it puts her in a really good light. Obviously she was a good person, like all she did was spend her life trying to give back to the others in the church and stuff.
And that can also talk to like speak to gender roles too, right? And like
which I thought was so cool about this story.
Yeah.
That's why I brought up Boudica. What year was Boudica?
Way back when. I mean, Roman Empire days. When were they in Britain?
Oh, Jesus, hell. 60 or 61? Well,
right on.
Very different time then, but either way. It just like...
But yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. That it was interesting for me to see the hero of the story as like I said, that warrior goddess of the female, like not the damsel in distress kind of thing. But like as you would see like a Valkyrie or something, you know, somebody prepared to get ugly to get stuff done, you know what I mean? I'm describing it super badly because I'm not sober right now, but I'm trying to get there.
But she's pious as well too. It sounds like she's like made to look like this, and she probably was maybe in real life. I don't want to like say one way or another, but like her story when we're looking at this part of it, it's like a pious woman melts down her own jewelry so she can put crosses up in the church, right?
Yeah. She didn't lack for money people, though,
you know. So it's
just to put that out there.
Sure, yeah. She cares about the people enough to be like, hey, let's do something about the taxes here. Oh, what a gentle heart this woman has. So she's beautiful. Oh, look at her beautiful hair and you know, stuff like that. So I think it's a neat look at society at the time, you know, and also I think it's cool that she had land, like she owned her own property and still continued to own said property.
Honestly, I kind of found the real person a little bit more interesting than the legend. It was like she was the last one. First of all, cool. Yeah, and they wrote it down. She had lands, and not only that, but the last left after Norman conquest. I was like, holy hell! I was like, that would have been William.
Yeah,
yeah.
But let's focus on her being naked on a horse. Like the real person was quite a cool gal. I like that. Thank you.
Sounds like it. It was really interesting to me how people said the story really set her up to sound like she was suffering for her people or whatever. And I was like, it's very interesting.
Okay. Okay.
It's just a very fascinating look at whatever the hell was going on at the time.
Right. Yeah. Ride or no ride. Ride or die. Ride or no.
Ride or no ride.
No ride. Yeah, I should stick with that first option there. But she was ride or die for her people. I guess is what they're trying to say, I guess.
Dude, she was willing to bust those titties out. I'm going to still believe it in my heart.
Sometimes you gotta. No, that was good. No, thank you for bringing us a little slice of
joy,
legend history, and joy. Yeah, that's a great uplifting note to end on for a. It's been one hell of a week, folks. I hope you're all taking care of yourself and take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and hopefully, maybe bummer shipwrecks aside, I gotta be honest, my story is less of a bummer than the one I had originally chosen. So,
oh good, it got better.
It was better than what I was going to do, but no, shipwrecks aside, hopefully you enjoyed that. Got to kind of maybe have a little bit of escapism for a little bit as we charge ahead. At the moment, it's election day. At the moment, I have no idea what polls are looking like.
I just hope that everything to come from here, regardless of what happens, I need everything to come from here and go to here. Everybody, like what Laurel said, regardless of what happens, light a joint, do some self-care, I'm going to go do a face mask because, as you can see, I have a breakout. That's what this stress does to me, you guys. And you know what? I just decided this with all of you here. I'm going to make chili tonight, and it's going to be so good.
Make some chili. Do that.
Ooh,
yeah.
With my homemade bone broth.
Stay off the Great Lakes at this time period that
Yes,
you're listening.
please do. Oh my God.
This is not the time of year to be having a little SS Minnow cruise out onto the Great Lakes. It's going to be like Gilligan's Island or worse for y'all. Don't do it. Maybe stay off the Great Lakes for a little bit.
It's been a crazy year. It's going to be like 1913. What are you talking about? Just don't even go by the coast.
Yeah, we don't need any more drama. Yeah. Take care of yourselves. I hope that you had a great time hanging out in the smoke circle with us. We're so glad that you were here. We look forward to having you again in 2 weeks for season 4, episode 6, episode 93. You know, we're just going to keep on cranking out those episodes and hanging out with you folks because we love it so much. And in the meantime, get money, get high, give love, and
titties out for lower taxes.
Titties for lower taxes.